Top of the morning to you on this November 21st. Morning Jocks. Jocks 94.5, Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order. Shout out to my dad. Happy birthday, big dog. Hope you enjoyed the day. Hopefully I won't worry you too much today. But welcome into Morning Jocks. And a very unique start to the morning. So when we get in, it's very rare. It's very rare that we have like fan mail, I guess you would say. So I get into the studio this morning and there's a package with my name on it. And it's www.maroonu.com. I'm thinking, what could this be? Mississippi State? Oh no, y'all. For anybody that's watching on YouTube at this moment, I have the Kalen DeBoer special, the loose kind of short sleeve hoodie, but it's Texas A&M. I kind of don't know how to
What do you say, Damian?
Oh, I'm very appreciative. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But that means I have to wear it now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like in public?
Yes.
Texas A&M?
You wear every other team.
But this right here is just, that's a lot. Thank you. Whoever sent that to me, I appreciate it. I guess I have to speak positive things about Texas A&M moving forward, or at least for today. I'll try my best. As long as we don't bring up a certain quarterback from the past that used to wear those colors, I'll probably I think we'll be okay.
John Mack just wanted to make sure you had something to wear.
Well, hey, I am very appreciative. I do appreciate it. It's definitely surprising. I was not expecting any kind of gifts, but hey, we appreciate it. We appreciate it as well. Do you want anything? What size do you wear? Like I got two.
Oh no, I'm good.
You sure?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
I got you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Those had your name on them, not mine.
I got you. But you hate Texas more than people from Texas A&M.
No.
I could have sworn you did.
Nah. Nope, not yet. Give me a couple years and I might, but not yet.
I got you. But we appreciate everybody locking in with us this morning. We had some action last night, especially here in the state of Alabama. How about Alabama basketball, Conrad? Coming out the gates with a big win over Illinois in the CM Newton Classic here in Birmingham. And the crazy thing is, the superstar that we expect to see went scoreless. Yes, Mark Sears, 0 for 5 from the field, 0 points. But when I tell you the rest of his team was carrying the load, they did. It's fun. It's an exciting brand of basketball when you watch Alabama because they do, one, defensively, it makes shots difficult for you. Illinois, I will say, is a good basketball team. We'll probably see them in March for sure. But Alabama knocks off Illinois Fighting Illini 100-87 last night here in Birmingham. And Grant Nelson, we had another Grant Nelson game where it felt like, okay, he's locking in. I think Alabama and Auburn are both kind of destined for a nice showdown here in the SEC. And the SEC schedule opens up, and some of the teams that they're playing, but they're deep. The teams are deep, and I think that's one of the cooler things that we've seen on both sides of it. Of Nate Oats don't really care what five is out there. They're gonna hustle on defense 1,000%. They're gonna put some shot ups offensively, and they get into the cup. Like exactly what the game plan is. It's just how do they get there. But I think what we saw last night from this Alabama team, that has to deem positive. You have to give positive vibes moving forward for this team.
Yeah, I mean that was a good response after losing to Purdue, and still not. I mean, anytime you score 100 points against a top 25 team, that's going to be good. I'm sure the takeaways for Nate Oats will be on the defensive side, where they let Illinois, hang around. It just kind of felt like, Alabama kind of consistently had this double-digit lead, especially in the second half, and then, Illinois would go on a little run, cut it down to 8 or 9, and then Alabama would go on a run and build up the lead again, and it just kind of went back and forth like that. And we know defense was a big point of emphasis for this team and for Nate Oats in the offseason. So I would say there's still some room for growth there, certainly. But, as you mentioned, I would say, maybe a little bit of a double-edged sword. It's great that you can go out there and score 100 points and beat, a ranked team without your best player in Mark Sears. But, then you also have the concern of, well, he didn't score any points. So, but I did think it was very cool if you missed it or you didn't see anything from after the game. He subbed himself out of the second half. Like he told Nate Oates, "Hey, y'all, but this is working. Don't mess up the rotation by throwing me in there. I'm having an
Mm-hmm.
off night." And I thought that was really cool because I know a lot of people, well, did he get hurt? Did something happen? It's like, no, he just, hey, what? Don't mess with don't mess with it while it's working. I'll just stay over here on the bench. So that was, that's very cool. There's very few players I think out there that would make that kind of a call. Um, but I will say at the same time, love Mark Sears. He's a great player. I think he's going to have another great season. It's going to be different than last year just because Alabama is deeper, I think, and you have more guys that can contribute and more guys that can score consistently. And as great as Mark Sears is, I think LeBaron Philon has shown that he is their best player, at least through this point in the season. He just has something that he's got the juice. Like he's just got a little something to him when you watch him play and you go, "Yeah, that guy's going to be in the NBA before too long and he's probably going to have himself a very nice career." He's explosive. He's not scared, for him to be so young and to be a freshman just it's remarkable, man. Some of the plays that he's able to make and just his athleticism and some of the cuts that he can make and just getting to the rim and being able to finish, it's incredibly impressive. So he had a big game, and like you said, Grant Nelson was awesome. Aiden Holloway
Who?
had a good game. Yeah,
You talking about the guy that transferred from Auburn, right?
yeah.
Oh.
He had a nice game. It was funny. Our buddy Don was at the game last night, and he sent me a message and said, "Hey, I'm here watching your Tide," and of course Aiden Holloway's good when Don shows up. So he just needed a little bit of Auburn love in the building to show out. But no, it's good to see him get back on track. And hey, I mean, you got 5 more of these ranked opponents coming up here next, so you just got to keep this thing going. But it was seemed like a good environment down there at the BJCC. Seemed like everyone had a good time. I had a couple friends that were there, and yeah, it's cool. Just cool to see those kind of games, especially with Alabama and Auburn. I know we're going to get something similar with Auburn and Purdue, but just to get those kinds of games here in Birmingham with
Mm-hmm.
Alabama and Auburn being as good as they are, and kind of getting that interest and being able to draw a big crowd, it's cool for us here in Birmingham. So it was a good to see that last night, and hats off to Alabama for a big win.
Absolutely. And going back to Aiden Holloway, and also Illinois left a lot of change out there because they were atrocious from the free throw line. It was you could find them, you could see them being aggressive and still trying to inch back, attack the lane, get some fouls, but they weren't. They were either going up there missing 2, they'll go 1 and 2, and it's you have to be able to make those. I think they went 13 for 24 from the free throw line.
I'd say they shot twice as many free throws as Alabama and made essentially the same amount.
Right. So you left a lot of points there at the charity stripe. But I think for Alabama, just to see how deep this rotation is, and even when your best player and Mark Sears isn't, having the best of games, to see how everybody else elevated their game to a certain level, to another level, I think is impressive to see. And like you said, with the matchup, coming up with Houston and Rutgers, North Carolina, Creighton, they're about to roll into some real hooping. We're about to see some real hooping to start for both Auburn and Alabama, as Auburn's getting ready for the Maui Classic to take on some pretty high-powered names in college basketball as well. 205-834-9450. Your text message, your call. Something we didn't get a chance to do yesterday. What do you want to see from your team on this weekend? Auburn takes on Texas A&M at home. Alabama travels to Norman, Oklahoma to take on an ailing Oklahoma Sooners team in preparedness for what we know exactly is coming up next week in the Iron Bowl. So we want to hear from you. 205-834-9450. Your text message, your calls, and also just discussions on what you want to see from your team this weekend. Keep it locked right here on Morning Jocks and Jocks 94.5. 6:13 here on Morning Jocks, Jocks 94.5. Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order and you as well, our wonderful listeners. 205-834-9450. Your text messages, your calls. As we take a look at this weekend slate of games, especially here in the state of Alabama, with our two teams, Alabama taking the trip to Norman, Oklahoma to take on the Sooners, and Texas A&M comes into Jordan-Hare to take on the Tigers. Texas A&M right now a 2.5-point favorite. Alabama a 13.5-point favorite on the road against Oklahoma. So when we look at, these two games specifically, Conrad, coming up Saturday, things that we want to see from these teams on the weekend, and I think we'll start off with Alabama and Oklahoma. I think for Alabama, it's, can you continue with the joyless murder ball? Can you continue this trend that you started against LSU of incorporating more quarterback design runs, not really trying to stretch it outside? We're running quarterback power. We got Jam and Justice in the backfield. The offensive line seems like they're gelling well, and not having to rely on the big plays. If you got them, you get them. If you don't, just continue to, ground and pound, possess the clock. Because to me, I don't think Oklahoma offensively can. This is just a bad matchup for Oklahoma offensively because you've been trying to find who you are and find an identity pretty much all season long with, Hawkins coming in, when Jackson Arnold having some struggles early on. You've never seen the complete package of what Oklahoma's offense can do. I think defensively, they're good, but they've started to wane here on the backstretch as opposed to in the beginning of the season where it's like, okay, they're just a couple plays away offensively from really, putting it all together. But now I just think they're kind of they're in no man's land of, man, our defense isn't terrible. It's just our offense can't really back us up. They're not scoring any points, so they're asking us to do everything. So I'm interested to see if Alabama can continue with their identity, what they started with LSU of being able to just ground and pound when the game's on the line in the fourth quarter. It's here it comes, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And defensively, can you continue to cause turnovers? Can you continue to make the offense make mistakes and make sure Jahai Campbell is still playing at the level he's been playing? The secondary, they're starting to gel, even with some different pieces, and these younger guys starting to elevate. So, to be honest, I just want to see a complete game from Alabama when it means the most here in November.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question for this one is, I know the last time you went on the road and you played LSU, you had a great performance. And not to say that they're going to overlook this team or take it for granted or anything like that, but I mean, it's easy to get up for a night game in Death Valley, right? Like that's not a that's what you sign up for, right? Those are the types of games that you want to play in. And now, not saying this isn't the type of game you want to play in, but the same things are still on the line, but you're going up against an inferior opponent. There's not as much pressure. The atmosphere is going to be different. And, does that affect the way that you've prepared for the week? Or does that affect the way that you come out and start the football game? Because, again, it's just you're going on the road, another opportunity to show that you're not going to make the silly mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it is for me is just keep, you seem to have found your identity over the last month. Can you continue to double down on what your identity is and keep down that path? Because, I think that's really the concern is, offensively, if Oklahoma has a chance to win this game, it's going to be because their defense saves the day, in my opinion. Because I don't think we're going to get that offensive, epiphany from them this year where you just have that game where it all clicks. And I could be wrong. That could be on Saturday in Norman. And we could be looking at a different game. But, I mean, you even go back to their game against Missouri in the last game that they played where, they looked better. They had an opportunity to win that game late. And then, just craziness happened with the scoop and score and everything. But, I mean, they had 250 yards of offense in that game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you looked at that and went, well, they're better, and they were, but you're 250 yards offense. Like, that's not going to get the job done. And so that's where for Alabama, it's just, if you're Jalen Milroe, don't turn the ball over. You brought it up defensively. I mean, can you keep getting takeaways? You have 5 straight games now where you've had 3 or more takeaways. Can you keep that going? But yeah, I think it's just continuing to do the things that you've been doing in terms of finding your identity, running the football, protecting the football, being aggressive on the defensive side, and not making the mental errors that kind of killed you at times early in the season. So that's what I'm looking for. but it's just a cool, I'm going to be up there for the game. I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll just be, these are the kinds of things that are cool where you have matchups that we haven't gotten in the past. I know we've seen these two play in the postseason here in the recent past, but just getting an opportunity to see, the Alabamas go to Tuscaloosa, a Georgia going to Austin, Texas, like just
Hmm.
those kinds of environments and getting these teams to go on the road in different venues, be in front of different fan bases, get to interact with different people. It's cool, and that's one of the cool things about the SEC this year is just kind of getting everybody acclimated. So it should be a good game, but let's be honest, Alabama should go and handle your business.
That's it. That's what it comes down to. And then kind of looking at Auburn this weekend as they take on the 15th ranked Texas A&M Fighting Aggies, and the matchup to me, it I can understand the positive energy and the feel good vibes you got from watching Auburn against Louisiana Monroe. But you also have to take into account the opponent and what they did. Yes, I know Peyton Thorne probably had his best game as a quarterback against Louisiana Monroe, but it's still I understand where the positive vibes come from, but it's hard for me to kind of just get on board with it. I do think Auburn can make this game extremely competitive. They can make it as uncomfortable as possible for Texas A&M, but I think Texas A&M, what they present, especially on the defensive line, that's kind of Auburn's weaknesses. That's Auburn's weakness on the offense. It's the offensive line. They haven't been consistent all year long. And I just think this matchup is not one I think they're going to have the get right game. But if they do, by God, you got Jarquez Hunter run for 200 yards again. But it's how can it be this week with everybody saying Auburn's got nothing to lose and all this stuff, and it's they kind of had the same vibe when they would play Vanderbilt and still went out there and lost. And how do you feel with this matchup with Texas A&M that, okay, you can probably make it difficult. I think a night game in Jordan-Hare will be a fun experience. It's going to be a big game. But Texas A&M, they know what's at stake these next 2 weeks as well. I don't necessarily think one outweighs the other. They're both going to be motivation. There is not a question about if they're going to be motivated to play because Texas A&M knows what's happening next week. They know what the potential ramifications if you lose a game for these next 2 weeks of what may happen. But I think for Auburn, one is just decision making by Peyton Thorne. Can he continue the same thing he had against Louisiana Monroe, but now you're doing it against SEC competition, and you got to defend. You got to be able to defend home turf. And I think for DJ Durkin defensively, he's gonna have some. He's probably gonna dial some stuff that Marcel Reed may not have seen early on. But also, you're young in the secondary. So it's you find the evening out process because they have veteran receivers at Texas A&M. They've been able to still find ways to run the football even without Le'Veon Moss being in the lineup anymore due to injury. So I just think the matchup for Auburn doesn't lean in their favor, but they can be competitive. I think defensively, as long as you still have those young guys continuing to play at a high level that they have been, and just let Keldric Faulk loose. It's your time to shine, big dog. But also be aware of Marcel Reed when he breaks the pocket. He is as an electric of a runner in the conference as anybody, even as a freshman. If he gets past your secondary, you are going to have to turn your head. You got to haul ass to go get him because he has the wiggle, he has the space, and he does feel like he plays with the confidence of that bigger than a freshman. He feels like, yeah, this is my team. This is my offense. This is what we need to do. And I have no doubt that Mike Elko is not going to sit there and downplay how big this Auburn game is for his guys. And I'm just interested to see what it's going to look like on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with the sense of, again, I mean, I've talked about it. I understand why Auburn fans are optimistic. I understand why. Part of it is because, let's be honest, you haven't had a ton of weeks this year where you were able to walk away with a bunch of positives, but you were last week, and you want to think that that's going to translate, and maybe it will. And I just think the offense for Auburn is, I mean, that's where the game is going to be won or lost, in my opinion, right? Like, I believe that the defense can do enough to, let's say hold Texas A&M under 30.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a question of offensively for Auburn. Are you going to be able to do anything? Because I go back and I know, year to year, it's completely different. New coaching staff, new players. I get it. But, I go back to this game last year where for a half or a little over a half, Auburn defensively shut Texas A&M down and was able to keep them in that game. And then you eventually got to that point where the offense wasn't doing anything and the defense just couldn't hold up anymore. And so is that the kind of game we're going to get again where I could see it being competitive early. I expect it to be competitive early. I'm not going to be surprised if Auburn has, a lead at halftime, for example. But in the second half, is it a point where, are you winning 7-3 at halftime or 10-7 or something like that, where all it's going to take is a couple of good drives from Texas A&M to completely shift the game? So it's there's a lot on Peyton Thorne in this game. This would be by far the biggest win that Hugh Freeze has had during his time at Auburn. Obviously, it sets the Iron Bowl up to be able to go to a bowl game if you win that one as well. But I just think offensively, you have to. What Hugh Freeze said after the game was talking about simplifying some of the play calls, simplifying the offense, and we saw how that worked against ULM. I know it's different against Texas A&M, but hopefully that is something that, as bad as it might be to go, well, it took us 10 games to figure out we need to simplify some things. And imagine if we had done that earlier in the season, but it's better late than never. So we will see how that translates onto the field. But I mean, it's another game where it's on the road in the SEC. Texas A&M's the better team. They've been the better team all year. It should be that simple, but it's not, right? That's why we play the game. So I'm very interested to see how this one plays out, because this feels like should be a big momentum opportunity for Auburn, even if you don't win the Iron Bowl, but to get this kind of a win, to be able to look back and go, all right, the season didn't go the way that any of us thought it would. It was a disappointment of a season. I know in terms of the win-loss record, we, it's a downgrade from what we did last year, but we finally put it all together and won one of those big games, because that's what we haven't seen Hugh Freeze be able to do yet. He's gotten close, got really close a couple times, but this would certainly be a big one for them. But, hey, according to Mike Elka, though, they're totally focused on Auburn. Had a little slip of the brain there.
Like what you did there. I like what you did there. But I do think it would be a good game. But I think for Auburn, I don't know. Like it's you can see the talent is there. The talent is there. There's no question about it. It's okay if we're waiting to see the complete package in the month of November. It's just kind of, well, where was this against Cal? Where was this against Arkansas, Oklahoma? And granted, to your point, it's the decision-making of Peyton Thorne at the quarterback position. And I think, what we've been able to see for Jarquez Hunter the past couple games is truly just give him the ball and let it and see what happens. But I do think that offensive line is going to have a tall task ahead of them with that defensive front from Texas A&M. I went back and watched the LSU-Texas A&M game, and they were LSU probably had the best offensive line at that time. And they had Garrett Nussmeier running like a chicken with his head cut off. He had no time. And they weren't able to run the football. And I think that's where Auburn they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to establish something consistent in the run game to at least loosen it up. And can you move these guys? I'm not saying that you got to go out there and just ram it down their throat every play, but I do think that you have to have some sort of presence in a run game, with the run game. Even if you run side to side and make them chase you, don't let that defensive line be the game wreckers, because they can be. Every single one of them. Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, you look at Nick Gordon, like those guys can really wreck the game if given the opportunity. So for the offensive line, you have to put a body on a body. You got to be fundamentally sound. You got to be accounted for all those guys, because any one of them start to have a little disruption up front, it will throw everything off. And I think for Auburn in that situation, think about hitting something quick on the screen game. I think Texas A&M secondary, have they been tested week in and week out? Maybe not, but we saw the South Carolina game when Lenore Sellers felt like, oh, I can really play with these guys. Oh, they're having the busted assignments in the secondary. Oh, here we go. You can't have that, because I do think Peyton Thorne is smart enough to realize, okay, well, somebody's going to be open in that situation. They're bringing some extra pressure. Got to be able to react and get the ball out quick. And also Peyton Thorne with his legs. if given the opportunity, we know athletically he's not going to be afraid to take off and be a valuable piece to that Auburn offense with his legs as well. He says, man, you got to be smart, make sound decisions, be smart, and we'll see where it goes from there. We'll keep the conversation going on the other side. Take a look at some games across the SEC and across the nation. Also hear from you on the Jocks text line and phone line 205-834-9450. What do you want to see from your team this weekend coming up, as rivalry week is starting to creep up on us here in the next couple days after this weekend? So keep it locked right here on Morning Jocks and Jocks 94.5. 6:33 here on Morning Jocks, Jocks 94.5, Damian Mitchell, alongside Conrad Van Order and you, our wonderful listeners there, not just in the city of Birmingham, but all over the world, wherever you may be listening. JocksFM.com, the Jocks mobile app. We're there. You too. Hey, y'all. We're here as well every single morning from 6 to 7 a.m. Having some fun, just recapping Alabama basketball win over Illinois last night here in the city of Birmingham, the CM Newton Classic, as Alabama knocked off the Fighting Illini 100-87. Also looking towards this weekend in the sport of football with Alabama taking on Oklahoma and Texas A&M, traveling to Jordan-Hare to take on the Auburn Tigers. Expect to be some physical SEC matchups this weekend. Also a game that could be interesting depending on where you are at 11 o'clock in the morning. Ole Miss traveling to Gainesville to take on the Florida Gators, a Florida Gators team that they've seen some highs, they've seen some lows. But one thing I will say, they have been very, very competitive for everything that's going on with Billy Napier and the job situation of, if this is going to be his last game pretty much week to week, or just figuring out his job security. And then Scott Strickland lets everybody know that, hey, we're rocking with Billy because Billy's rocking with us, and we're going to stick with him. And now this matchup with Ole Miss, who pretty much, if Florida would have let go of Billy Napier, this would have been an audition for Lane Kiffin and see if he was going to be the next head coach. But now Ole Miss back into the college football playoff hunt. They know what's at stake. Lane Kiffin has shown at times he can have a blunder. Shout out to the University of Kentucky early on this season. But also, he's won some big-time matchups, a la Georgia, when his team was the more physical program in that ball game. So I'm interested to see what this Rebels-Gators matchup is going to look like, because we've seen Ole Miss teams go down there to the Swamp and beat up on the Florida Gators, but DJ Lagway, maybe not the same as one Tim Tebow. Similar build, but
he's pretty good though.
Yeah, he is. I don't think he's gonna have a statue. I don't think they're gonna build him a statue if he knocks off Ole Miss this weekend. But I also don't think they're gonna build a statue for him if Ole Miss knocks off Florida this weekend. If there's any quote that it's gonna be, hey, we're figuring it all out. He's young, he's a freshman, no pressure. But I do think Billy can. I think Florida, if they play like they did against LSU, where defensively they were smothering, they were everywhere, and then offensively it's, hey, we'll pick our spots. When we get them, we gonna gash them. It's just, can you do this against an Ole Miss team that's starting to figure some things out here in the month of November?
Yeah, but you got to feel good if you're Florida, because again, you're right now. You're playing with house money, right? Like if you lose this game, you still have the game against Florida State to get bowl eligible. So it's not like your bowl eligibility is, going to live or die based on what happens in this game. But, you're riding hot off after the win over LSU. And, I think, you brought up the defense. I think that's where a lot of it comes down to for Florida as you go back and look at, the games they've been more competitive in this year. And it was because of the defense, right? Like in the Tennessee game, the defense is really what kept them in it. I know Lagway had to make some big plays, but ultimately, that was a game where your offense left so many points on the board, and your defense is what kept you alive in that game. And that defense was such a big part of what they were able to do last week with LSU, as you mentioned. And, that's where, that's kind of where I come to this Ole Miss game. And it's, we've seen teams be able to limit what they can do offensively. Even outside of, Arkansas and, what they did to Georgia. You go back and look at some of their games in SEC play, like what they did to South Carolina was impressive, but, they're not scoring 35, 40 plus points every single game in SEC play anymore. And, I think that gives you a chance if you're Florida. And let's be honest, not saying that, Ole Miss is going to overlook this game or anything like that, but, you're kind of riding high right now. Like things have been going well for you. Are you able to handle this success, right? Are you able to continue to do the little things right and just get into the playoffs? And I'm not, I'm not going to say, I think the Georgia game was his most important game going into it just because of what was on the line. And if you lose, you're not going to be in the playoff conversation. And I would say this is one of the biggest games for Lane Kiffin in his career too, though, because if you lose this game, all that goodwill is gone, and you're not a factor in the college football playoff race anymore, most likely, and you have to win this game if you're Lane, because again, everything up to right now has been fine. We can forgive the yeah, remember they lost to Kentucky? That was so weird and funny. That kind of stuff's not going to be okay anymore if you lose this game. So this is a very, very important game for Ole Miss. I know you have the Egg Bowl coming up, rivalry games, anything can happen. Let's be honest, this has not been Mississippi State's year. You have to feel really good about where you are if you're Ole Miss going into that game, even though it's a rivalry. So you have to get through this game because this is a Florida team that is playing really well right now. They're motivated. They are happy. They are just happy to be here right now, right? We're 5-5 in the November. We've gotten some big wins.
Yep.
Like we're playing competitive football. We've got a quarterback that looks pretty darn good. They're riding high right now. And so it's this is a very interesting game. Plus it's at 11 o'clock on the road. You got to get up early and be ready to go if you're Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. So there's a lot of yeah. This is going to be an interesting one. I'm not going to call for an upset or anything, but it could be a little uncomfortable,
Right.
I think, on Saturday. But the good news for Ole Miss is Trey Harris is coming back. So
that's big.
As good as you've been for the last month or so, you're about to get even better.
Yeah. Now you got your number one guy coming back, and if he's healthy, he is going to be a matchup problem for anybody in that Florida secondary.
Yep.
And everybody else that's been able to step up in his absence as well. So I'm interested to see what this Ole Miss and Florida matchup will look like. Let's go to the phone lines, 205-834-9450. Somebody that wanted Lane Kiffin but settled for Hugh Freeze. That's Wardam Don on the phone with us this morning. What's going on, Don?
What's up, guys?
What's happening?
No, I'm telling you, what a night last night. Conrad, buddy, it figures that Holloway would sit the ball like that in front of me, buddy.
Oh, I know. He just needed a little Auburn love in the building, Don, and he turned into form. So yeah, it was a big night for him.
Yeah, I tell you what, it proves to me how good Alabama, like they were already talking about it, it proves to me how good your team is when your best player and your All-American has an off night and everybody else picks up the slack for him. Very, very impressed, buddy. And a decent crowd, but I'm going to kid you about something. I think when Auburn packs the place for Purdue, we're going to have a lot louder of a crowd, though.
Hey, well, we'll see about that, Don. I thought it looked like it was a pretty solid crowd there last night, but you were there, so yeah, you have a better perspective.
It was, and I sent you that picture of me and Burr together, and it was good to see Burr, and I got to meet his brother last night. Very good man and everything. But let's talk a little A&M Auburn real quick, guys. Damian, buddy, I think with what's their quarterback's name? I forget.
Marcel Reed.
I think what we're going to do, my friend, is put a spy on him, and I think it's going to be my really good freshman player, Riddick. Riddick's going to be a spy on him.
Yeah. He's done a good job in that system where he has been a spy, just free reins, and when he sees a quarterback take off, he's got the speed. It's at least sideline to sideline to match up with him. So yeah, I think that'll be good to see.
And I think it's going to be a very low scoring game because I know their defense is very, very good, and that's the strength of my team is our defense. So I'm expecting a low scoring game in that game, and I'm happy that the game's at night because Auburn's tradition at night we play. I think we play better in Jordan-Hare at night than we do during the day. I really do.
Oh yeah, because 11 o'clock and 2:30 they just don't get it done.
It hadn't gotten done for me yet this year, has it, buddy?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. You just need a night game in Jordan-Hare.
Yeah, exactly. Well, my fans, they get a little liquored up and ready. My stadium's gonna be ready to go. And John Mack, if you're listening out there, good luck to you, buddy. I've been to an A&M game down there before, and your fans show up, and I hope your band shows up, that their band's sensational. But anyway, good guys, have a good day, and talk to you soon.
Appreciate it, Don.
205-834-9450. Your text message, your calls, what you want to see from your team this weekend. Just kind of going back to the conversation we had about, Alabama knocking off Illinois in basketball. Brent from Irondale texting, he says, never thought I would live to see the day both Alabama and Auburn were both in the top 10. Roll Tide. And he also has Ole Miss by 14 Saturday over Florida. I like that.
Okay.
Seems reasonable. hey, good teams win, great teams cover. And right now that game's 10.5 for Ole Miss. So we'll lock that one in. Adrian from Birmingham, I just want to stick with the things that are working and don't go back to the things that don't work. If we can run the ball consistently, keep running it until they stop it. I just don't want it to look like the Vandy game where we couldn't even score more than 7 points. Talking about Auburn Saturday. It's going to be tough.
That would be my concern, and that would be, going back to last week with the ULM game, and I think the spread on that one was 24.5, something like that for Auburn. And, I looked at it and granted they covered, credit to them for doing that. But you looked at it and you went, they haven't even scored 24 points in 2 months. And then to think that was what their point spread was. But I mean, let's see, the most points you've scored in an SEC game up to this point in the season is 24 against Kentucky. And outside of that, I mean, it's a lot of, high teens, low 20s kind of situations for Auburn. And you can live there, I think, against Texas A&M if your defense is going to step up to the challenge and be the better unit on the field on Saturday. But again, I just look at it for Auburn, and I think that's a valid concern, right? As we've seen this team just essentially stall on offense. And even when they're moving the ball down the field, whether it's turnovers or, you're not able to convert on field goals and special teams miscues and things, even when they're moving the ball, they've left a lot of points on the board this year. And I think that would be my, a big area of concern if I'm Auburn going into it, is just, this is not one of those games where, it's okay, well, we had a great drive, we're moving the football, it's a close game, it's a low scoring game. Like, again, like I said, it's great if you're winning at halftime and it's 10-7 or something like that. I just feel like you are going to need a significant lead in this game, I think, if you're going to, before you get too comfortable, because Auburn's not built to come from behind. They're not built to come from a deficit, and especially with what A&M can do. If you just have Marcel Reed out there, you just got to, hey, go get us 4 yards a few times, pick up a couple first downs. Like, it's going to be tough to stop.
Absolutely. Somebody else takes in and says, not only is this a big game for Auburn, it's a big game for Texas A&M. Every game for A&M is a playoff game. Yeah. And again, the biggest thing for Texas A&M is just don't get caught looking ahead. You go out there, you make sure this week it is Auburn. You are locked in on Auburn on Saturday. Now, as soon as that game is over, by God, just lock in, because Texas is coming into town right after that. And we're talking about a renewed rivalry, and with a lot at stake, just don't get caught looking ahead. Don't get caught peeking.
And this is just a reminder, but if Auburn does pull off the upset, then you are looking at likely, well, depending on what happens, if they beat Texas, if they lose to Auburn and beat Texas, then you would have likely Alabama and Georgia in the SEC championship. If they lose to Auburn but still lose to Texas, then you'll probably have Texas and Alabama. So this has implications on who's going to play in the SEC championship. Potentially, if you're an Alabama fan, has implications for who you might play in Atlanta. There's a lot of things on the line here for both sides of this. And I know, Auburn wants to go to a bowl game, but I can promise you Texas A&M wants to go to Atlanta for the first time, because I can only imagine how many times they hear, well, Missouri, we went 2 years in a row and we joined, and Texas A&M still hasn't been. So, plus, I mean, come on, how funny would it be for Texas A&M to end up in Atlanta the year after Jimbo Fisher gets fired? I mean,
yes,
if it's got to happen, this would be the time for
this
it.
Has got to be it. So you're rooting for Auburn this weekend. That's what you're saying.
I just hope it's a good game.
Like the deflection. 205-834-9450. Your text message, your calls when we come back here on Morning Jocks and Jocks 94.5. Kanye West.
Good guess.
Yeah. Knew this one. Knew this one like the back of my hand, baby. Welcome back in the morning, Jocks. Jocks 94.5, Damian Mitchell, alongside Conrad Van Order here with you for a few more moments as we pass you along to McElroy and Kublick in the morning. Found out who sent the A&M gear. Steven from Dallas, man. He sent in this Texas A&M stuff that eventually I'm going to have to wear. Can't say I don't have any more Texas A&M gear. It's gonna be difficult, but you know, as long as it ain't the overalls, I think I can rock with this.
Yeah, you'll be all right.
Should be.
You
John
wear it
Mac-
on Monday.
Yeah, your boy John Mack texts in. He says, "Why are you scared to play my Aggies, Conrad? If you're scared, say you're scared."
Oh, I'm not scared to play Texas A&M. It's got nothing to do with that. I just, I don't like either of these teams that are playing. It's just one of those matchups where it's like, I don't really want. Can they both lose?
No, it's gonna be fun. Patrick texts in and says, "Conrad, stop trying to prop Auburn's offense up. It's not a lot of high teens, low 20s. They've scored 20 twice. They've scored 7 at home to Vandy. They scored 14 at Mizzou, and one was a fumble punt recovered for a touchdown." Basically, Patrick's saying Auburn sucks.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess my point was, they're averaging about 17 points a game is probably about what they're averaging in SEC play, and that's. I didn't know that was me propping up the Auburn offense by saying they're averaging like 17, 20 points a game. I mean, okay, maybe I was a couple points off, but yeah. I promise you, I did not mean that as a compliment to Auburn's high-powered offense that they're averaging like that many points a game. That was not a compliment.
Man, Jonathan texted. He's a Texas fan. He says, "I want to see my Texas team handle business and stay healthy. Let Arch finish the rest of the game." Yeah, because you got to lock in, man. Got a big rivalry the next week, too. Got to make sure everybody's healthy and protected for old A&M, man.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the Kentucky-Texas rivalry. That's a big one.
It's a rivalry?
It's a new one.
Oh.
It's a new one.
What is it, like the Stoops Bowl?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, Texas and Oklahoma, I mean, they did beat up on Bob Stoops for a while, or they at least played him. And now you got to return the favor to Mark. Like, hey, this is what your brother had to deal with for the past, decade plus.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll tell you this: if you're Texas, beat the doors off of Kentucky. Seriously, like at this point, I mean, that's what we all want to see, right? Like, let me see you go out and dominate somebody in the SEC. And no, I'm not counting Florida with their third-string quarterback. Go out there and, I mean, Kentucky's good defensively. We know that, right? It's just offensively they've been quite lackluster. So if you're Texas, this is a good defense. Go out there and dominate them like you should, and start to silence some of those doubters like me.
Robert Woods, is that the receiver from the Houston Texans?
Say he's retired now, right?
Yeah. He says, "Get off the Texas praise. As of today, Texas has beaten 2 teams that have winning records: Colorado State and Vanderbilt. They are a poser." Listen, we're not praising Texas. I promise you that. Conrad hates Texas. Like, he hates them. He says they ain't beat nobody.
They haven't beaten anybody.
They ain't beat nobody.
They haven't. Doesn't mean I hate them. It just means they haven't shown me anything yet.
Nah. Listen, y'all, it's I was speaking hyperbole. I know Bob Stoops beat the brakes off Texas. Let's just talking about the fact that he's going against another Stoops. Like, Texas is going against another Stoops, brother. Calm down. Everybody's got to be right. Everybody's just got to be right.
They hate the whole bloodline there in Austin.
Yeah, you're right. Like,
doesn't matter.
Mark Stoops, Bob. It don't matter who's on the other side. We bring him belt and boot to Ace up there to Lexington. Excuse me, no, they get him at home, so they get him in Austin. That's even worse. Even worse. You got to go down there to him. At least Bob got him in Dallas.